Well, welcome. Today I'm here with Dr. Benjamin Askew. He's an actor, and but what else do you do in London?
I'm not in London anymore. I was in London for a long time.
Okay.
Up in Yorkshire
Oh,
now.
wonderful.
Yeah,
And you've recently published an article featuring the Act Matrix, and
hmm
actually I have it here. Let me see if I can pull it up. So towards or not towards using the Act Matrix as a psychological tool in the analysis and interpretation of dramatic texts and characters. This article is very fascinating because it uses the matrix to take a look at a dramatic text, some Shakespeare, and actually here's really cool diagrams and images using the matrix, sorting out um, one of the monologues, right, in Hamlet,
hmm
and kind of walking through that process with a professional actor or a student of
yeah,
acting, using the matrix to sort out the motivations and kind of what's going on internally for that character
hmm
so that they can better embody and perform that role. Is that correct?
that's right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Excellent. Yeah, so I'm excited to have a conversation with you about kind of how you got to that process. Why don't we just start with a little bit more about your background and the work that you're doing over there?
sure. Yeah, well, as you say, I my background is in theatre, so I trained as an actor and I worked as an actor for quite a long time, for about 10 years or so. Um, and then more recently, I've been working in drama schools, teaching and directing. And I kind of paused for a little while to do a PhD for reasons that I'm sure will come to me at some point. But I decided to do that. So yeah, I'm teaching acting, and then in the last couple of years, I started this group called the Working Action Group, um, which started off as a kind of COVID project on Zoom. And from that, we've developed this project that I call Act for Acting, which is trying to look at the whole process of acting and actor training through the prism of act, to see
Hmm.
what that gives us. So that's the starting point that led to the article and to that work. And we've kind of got a three-part structure to that project, a three-act structure, if you will,
Yeah.
which is to kind of look at how Act One is about people, so about how act can be helpful to the actor on a human level, the idea of psychological flexibility and how we
Hmm.
bring that to the actor, how we bring that to the rehearsal space. Um, Act Two, which is kind of where that article is about how do you then apply that same model to the understanding of character? Can that be helpful to us? And then the third part is kind of taking it into process and into what actually happens in rehearsals and performance. And that's kind of, so that's me and what I'm doing.
That's amazing. And your PhD, is it in psychology or is it in
No, no, it's not. It's not. It's in dramatic poetry.
okay.
Um, it does. It sort of has a link. In that part of what I was looking at with that was how you brought what are psychological approaches to acting to how you deal with heightened non-naturalistic text in the way of
Mm.
dramatic verse and poetry. So it has a link, but that was very much about existing so-called psychological approaches rather than kind of looking at contemporary psychology in
Hmm.
that way and bringing that in.
Wonderful. And what's the story of how you got connected with ACT and the ACT Matrix? How did you discover that and start applying that in your own life?
Well, it was a journey, a bit of a journey. The interest in character psychology has been a big part of my work from the beginning, from my own training and why I was interested in my own interest in acting in the first place. Um, and becoming fascinated by that, but also increasingly aware that a lot of the psychology that gets talked about in acting belongs to the late 19th, early 20th century.
Mm.
Um, I trained in a system that uses a lot of Jung and Jung's idea of psychological
Okay.
types, which is fascinating and brilliant. But it's it's based on a book that Jung wrote 100 years ago, and kind of thinking, what else is out there? What are we using stuff that might be useful and that might also reflect something that's a bit more of a contemporary way that we want to look at ourselves and look at human beings. And also through teaching, or through my own experience in the profession, but also through teaching, a kind of increased awareness of how difficult people find it and how difficult students find training, how much of an emotional and psychological struggle that can be for people, and thinking, right, are there things we can be doing better here? Are there things we can learn that can help people, help us in the room? And then I guess my partner is a clinical psychologist,
Okay.
so that helps. So my background is theatre, but she's a psychologist. So we've talked about this over a long time, of thinking about what stuff she's using, how might it be useful, how could you apply it to character, trying to formulate characters in different ways. And she'd mentioned ACT when she was doing some training, and a couple of things made my ears prick up. The first thing actually was about values, as I remember.
Mm-hmm.
She was talking about this, and I was thinking about how we talk about characters and what motivates them. And there's a lot that's about characters' goals, but kind of digging down underneath that can be very tricky. And values seem to really have the way ACT talks about values seem to offer a way of thinking about that. And then just this idea and of psychological flexibility, and of, as Russ Harris puts it, as to open up, be present, and do what matters.
Mm-hmm.
I just went, oh, that sounds like what we're trying to do. That sounds, so let's find out about it. And plus, she said ACT, and I went, oh, ACT for acting. That sounds a little catchier than CFT for acting or whatever. So this was bubbling away, and then COVID happened, and like a lot of people, I was feeling quite stuck. We were trying to work on Zoom and trying to do actor training on Zoom, which has its challenges, and all the feelings and worries that everyone was having, and what you can do and not do professionally in that situation. And I think, particularly looking at it through an ACT lens, I guess I was sort of trying to find something workable that I could do in the circumstances, right? Because you get all stuck and going round and round in your loops about, oh, if I could do this, if I could make COVID disappear, I could do this. If I had millions of pounds to build my own space or whatever, and go, okay, well, what can I do? I could set up a Gmail account and tweet something and see if some people want to explore this stuff I've been thinking about with ACT. So I did that, and I started looking at it in more detail. I had a huge advantage that COVID happened, so my partner's lots of her training moved online, so I could just hide in the background, and watch lots of very very great and probably very expensive ACT training over her shoulder. And the two things that really came out the more I got into it, I guess, is about stuckness and inflexibility, and how that, when you think about characters, how much there's so much character behavior, that I think there's a really human and empathic way of understanding, particularly when it's problematic behavior, or behavior that's difficult to comprehend, or that we don't approve of, to go, okay, how is this character stuck? How are these processes playing out? And also, stuckness in the actor. There, we want to go the other way. We want to go, how do we flex this up? Because we get in our own head, we get stuck. So we started playing about with it, and it seemed to go somewhere. The Matrix actually came a little bit later.
Mm-hmm.
We started out, and here we were with Zoom and the Hexaflex, and finding it very interesting, and trying to pick our way through it. And then I discovered some stuff in my reading, and then found some online stuff on the Matrix, and kind of went, oh, okay, this, right? Okay, let's start with this, and tried it out with the actors that were joining the group online, and it just kind of had a little penny drop moment. Not that we then go, oh, all the other stuff, that's no use to us, but of trying to find your way around the Hexaflex with all these 6 processes and the flexible versus inflexible. You can get very stuck with that, right? Of trying to understand flexibility, whereas you start with those 2 lines and you go, okay, here, let's work our way around. And it just seemed to open up a load of stuff. And we started doing the stuff that we've seen in the article there about going, okay, you can suddenly take a really complex speech like Hamlet's and in kind of this very simple human way kind of get an understanding of it. And also hopefully for us and for the actors start that process of becoming flexible
Yeah.
in a way
Yeah.
that's very accessible and immediate. And it doesn't start with either with lots and lots of concept or with necessarily having to start with very prolonged, kind of meditative act exercises. Those are great too, but they can be a bit off-putting for some people.
Yeah, that's super neat. And the Act Matrix in particular, especially that's the second book, The Essential Guide to the Act Matrix, has this concept of yes anding in as a part of the process of kind of using the matrix and experiencing your own internal and physical experience, which they relate back to this kind of what do you call it, improv, right? This idea of yes anding that actors often do. Is that something that you bring into the work, or is that just kind of a cute way of talking about
It is a
something?
really nice way to talk about, and as you say, it really echoes some stuff that gets said in acting context, and particularly in improv kind of work. Almost to the extent that I kind of wanted to step back from that a little bit. So when it sounds it could be a bit of a false friend, right? It sounds so familiar from the acting world that it might confuse us a little bit. So in terms of that direct stuff with improv work, we haven't done that yet, but it is something that we want to do. As in, part of what I want to do is to collaborate with other practitioners and other teachers, other directors, and there are people. Improv work is not my home territory, so I would really like to bring that, particularly with some people, with some people that's their forte, and see where we can take that.
Wonderful. Yeah, and so I'm excited to hear more about the program that you've got kind of running and where that's headed. But maybe we can take a detour first and talk a little bit about just some of the common mental health challenges that actors face, and also like the views of those by other professionals in the field. The directors, teachers, people that are producing productions. How is that treated or handled in
Well,
your world?
I mean, I think there's a lot going on for actors and for actors in training that can be challenging and that can certainly have an impact on well-being, on mental health, and certainly on their flexibility. I think that you could kind of group it into some strands. I think there's, if you look at acting as an industry, which is not my favorite word, but it's a word that gets used a lot in the acting industry, and I think that has a lot of challenges that impact on this, right? It's the whole setup of it involves, it's a lot of rejection and comparison, a lot, job insecurity. Money can be a very difficult thing. You're setting yourself up for lots of public criticism by the nature of what you're doing, and alongside that you have all these big narratives about what it means to make it and what it means to fail and how that reflects on you. And I think so just the setup of the industry, I think, can create a lot of anxiety and self-criticism, and can really have a negative impact on people. I mean, a big part of that needs to be addressed through how the industry needs to change and move forward. It can't be about centering it in the actor and going, it's your job to become more psychologically flexible and just deal with it. But I do think that within the nature of the industry, that act and those principles can help people decide how they want to situate themselves within that, what their values are, and how they want to move towards them within that context. I think there's then stuff that's about the kind of nature of acting itself, which again is, the job is you're standing up in front of people, opening yourself up to criticism and judgment. And that in itself can create a lot of anxiety, a lot of pressure. And you're expected to perform at the moment when it is required of you, and that's a lot of anxiety and pressure. And I think there's a particular thing for the actor in how difficult it can be to create any separation between yourself and the work. You know, it's this thing of you are your instrument, you are the work. If I can write you a poem and hand it to you, and there's my work and there's me, but for the actor, you are it. And I guess in a very sort of RFT-ish sort of way, you know, if I am my work, then my work is me. So
Yeah.
so any criticism of my work, anything that's going, is all about how terrible I am and how worthless I might be and all of that. So I think that, and the reliance on opinion of the opinion of others, it can be so subjective, and you're there going, is this good, is this bad, and there's the people to tell you, and that can be difficult. So I think there's a lot of stuff about the nature of acting that has a lot of anxiety and stuckness and self potential there. And then I guess the third big strand to it to maybe mention is about the whole issue of safety and acting. And that's it's a big topic, and there's different aspects to it. But for instance, dealing with going into extreme emotional circumstances and enacting them, and however you're meant to do that, and dealing with material that can be very difficult or challenging, and this expectation of vulnerability, and how that also spills over into the power dynamics in a space, and when it comes to particular kinds of vulnerability that's expected of actors. So I guess there's things there about going, there's a distinction I think act's really useful for, and I think comes into this project a lot, is there are lots of issues about what is safe, and it's really important to be able to distinguish between what act would talk about in terms of stepping out of your comfort zone, what is the expectation that you are going to feel uncomfortable and experience difficult stuff to do something that's really important to you, and what that is compared to this is a situation that is not safe and is not properly supported. And one of the things I think this is great for is creating a framework to really have that conversation and make that clear and apparent.
I hope that continues and develops. All I know about acting is what I'm seeing in the tabloids and things over here. But it seems to me, even just physical safety is something that we're barely starting to address on set and things like that here, let alone psychological safety that you're describing.
Absolutely, I mean, it's difficult because you can't say what is the attitude of people, because there's lots of different people in different positions, and things are changing. But I think there's a kind of old school attitude that's essentially boils down to suck it up, right? That kind of romanticizes the whole thing. It's hard and terrible, and also you want to be criticized and ripped apart because that's how you achieve excellence, right? And that. And there's stuff to that can motivate that kind of really part, and it's all tied up with a very sort of, it's the heroic struggle to achieve your dream and all of this kind of stuff, and it can really motivate people, but it can be really damaging and also get people motivated if you're putting it in the matrix on the left hand side, right? I'm so terrible, I'm not good enough, therefore I must work so hard to make that go away. But I guess you get and then there's a reaction to that is almost like everyone needs to be wrapped in cotton wool. No one should feel uncomfortable. I kind of, okay, if I'm not happy and having fun at every moment, then maybe something's wrong. And that was the thing that really spoke to me and speaks to me about the act approach again, about this way that it brings you to realize and accept that doing something meaningful, pursuing this thing we call acting, is going to be hard and bring stuff up, but that's about your values and what's important to you, and there's ways of doing that that are life affirming and purposeful, not suffering and glorifying that in some way.
And so that's why programs like yours are probably extra important, because I imagine on set there's hundreds of people, crew and staff and things, that if people are likely reaching out to people that they know or feel comfortable with,
Hmm.
and maybe saying, hey, I'm struggling here. And then there's some kind of peer support, I imagine, just informally.
Hmm.
But that relies on everybody being sort of educated about, how
It
do we
does, yeah.
approach these difficulties, and not just, say, rub some dirt on it or something, tough it out.
It does, and I think there's, and again, that is a conversation that's happening and changing, which is hugely important. But I think there's, because of some of those attitudes and because of some of those narratives, there's a fear about speaking up about stuff, or admitting that you're struggling with things, because you can't be weak or something, or you
Hmm.
can't be or you can't be a troublemaker,
Hmm.
or it's like everything's got to be great all the time, and that makes it really difficult to address if people feel that that's what's expected, and that's what's required if they're going to succeed.
Yeah. Okay. It's definitely a tough field. I admire everybody who strives for that work, and is able to kind of put themselves out there that way. Like you said, just the public, being in the public view, and your body as the instrument, and having all the eyes on you, literally.
Mm.
Um, it's something that not everybody can do. It's why actors hopefully get paid the big bucks. I know they don't always,
Well,
but
sometimes, but often not. Yeah, and of course, there's lots that's wonderful about that. It's not that
Mhm.
that's all just hot, difficult.
Yeah,
But it can be,
yeah, excellent. And so, you talked a little bit about it, but just the idea of applying ACT and psychological flexibility itself, not to the challenges that actors are facing internally, but
Mhm.
I'm curious too, what does it add to the embodiment of a role itself? Like, you know, uh, becoming a better actor.
Mhm.
Um, have you seen ACT be helpful in that way?
I have. I mean, I think it feels like we're very much at the start of that journey in terms of the embodiment side of it, particularly because so much of our early work, so much, such a big percentage of what we've done so far has all been Zoom. And we're trying to move beyond that and take it forward. So I think both of those first two parts make a big difference, because the stuff that is for the actor is also about the acting,
Mhm.
right? Because of that thing of being able to stand in the space and be open and present and kind of commit to what is being asked, you're asking of yourself, or is being asked of you, um, in itself makes a big difference to the embodiment of the role. Because if you're tight and protecting yourself, then that gets in the way of the work. Um, and the stuff about the character analysis, we've seen that make a big difference in terms of the actor's understanding of, say, this, like with Hamlet's soliloquy, of finding that human way of understanding it, and then that feeds forward into the acting work itself. I think we've got some big questions that I'm very eager to explore as we move towards more opportunity to work in an embodied way, which I guess is about how those processes operate, because they have to operate at both levels at once, right? For the act, because the actor is the
Mhm.
body of the character. But of what is it to be present not only for the actor in the room, but this process that we try to go through of being present in the imaginary circumstances, right?
Yeah.
In the world of the character. Um, and I think there's lots that connect with that is already done in acting exercises. So it's about finding those links. The stuff about the acceptance, being open to the thoughts and feelings of the character as you're experiencing them, and not kind of shying away from those. And I think fusion and diffusion, I think, is fascinating from an
Mm.
acting point of view. Um, and I really, that's a big thing I want to look at, because there's the process of the actor diffusing, like leaving, stepping away, getting a bit of distance from my own thoughts, but also this process that I've started to tentatively refer to as a kind of creative fusion, of
Mm.
going of the deliberate process of wanting to tangle yourself, wanting to
Mhm.
believe the thoughts of of this character within this drama, and how that works. Does that work? And how do you maybe use the act work to then step back again in that
Yeah.
process.
Well, that's an
Um,
amazing idea. Yeah.
so I'm excited by that, but we're very much at the beginning of that. So I wouldn't sort of say we've done that, but those are the ideas.
That's awesome. And the students that you're working with, I imagine that they probably don't have, a psychological background or knowledge of, what ACT is or whatever. So when you're introducing these concepts, the matrix and things like that, how are they receiving it? Do they think, oh, this is just another tool, or are they thinking, like, what's this guy trying to do? Apply this,
The
theory to this thing?
responses to it so far have been really amazing. Actually, I think it's different in different contexts because so through the working action group, the people that I'm working with there are coming specifically to that group to explore this work, and we've but some of them that have been involved from the beginning have now explored this over a prolonged period. So they're very active in the fact that this is exploring ACT, and they're helping me to do that. What we've done in more kind of one-off workshops or in the opportunities I've had to bring elements of this into my teaching and directing work outside of my own group is often we've kept it very, very simple. Which is why the matrix is such an amazing way of doing that. Let's just drop this in as our beginning. It's usually now the first thing that I do is go, I have to, kind of going, I have this way that I kind of look at things. Do you want to see it with me? And they get it. People get it very quickly, I think, both in terms of, how we can use it to talk about ourselves in the room. What are we collectively trying to move towards? What's going to show up and what's that? But also how, even without getting into it in any more detail, once you've introduced the matrix and just approaching a scene and going, okay, just before, let's just draw this out. What's important to this person? What do you think's showing up for them that's tricky here? So it connects really quickly, I think. One of the things that I think is really interesting that has the strongest response initially, quite often taking it into like a drama school setup, is talking about that you're going to do it and do a little bit of the chat right around it, and it's about I guess the you hurt where you care concept, and about the sort of not the can you delete your thoughts and that kind of control agenda, and we're talking about that in terms of doubts and self-criticisms that turn up about how am I as an actor? Am I rubbish? Am I as good as these people? And blah blah blah. And it's interesting that framing it just in those ACT terms about if you care about this, then some of this stuff is going to show up because that's your mind's job. That's what it's there to do. And it's like it can be a real sort of scales dropping from people's eyes moment because people every time we do that, someone says, "Oh my God, it's like I spend so much thinking I need to get rid of this and trying to turn this off and going, when will I get to the point that this is just gone?" Going, oh, actually, that's part of it. That's okay. That's actually to be expected. You go, yeah, that's okay. And that alone, I think, can kind of change the temperature of the room a little bit.
Yeah, that's amazing. And so I read on your website that you're hoping to do more longer term projects in this field. Tell me kind of where are you headed with this project? What is your kind of wildest hope or dream if you could get this really going in a big way?
Well, I think that, so the big ways, I guess, is to have a full course, a full sort of proper actors training that is built around this framework and the three parts of this framework. Obviously, we need to get it to a point where it was able to do that, and where some institution was willing to let us do that. But because I think part of what really excites me about it is actually the interaction of those different parts and getting those together. It's the fact that what I've discovered and the people I've been working with for some time, I think, have discovered is that doing the stuff on yourself, doing the exercise for yourself helps you to recognize this stuff in character. Doing the analysis of character through these terms actually helps you to reflect and acknowledge and open up things within yourself. So that's really exciting to me, that it's not just three bits, they're all mutually reinforcing, and to bring those together into a training where that could happen would be really exciting.
Mm-hmm.
And also to look at some conversations I've been having since the article about whether that even moves beyond acting, whether some of the stuff of talking about character and literature and how that can be valuable to you as an individual, whether you're interested in acting or not, but the content, but to look at characters and their behavior through this lens, and how that does help you to think about yourself and to make choices. So those are some things. I guess there's sort of routes to getting there. I want to look at how we embed the kind of the act for the actor stuff within a training, how we kind of create a protocol that's kind of tailored to that environment and test that and establish that, and how we build the character model, and how we get into some of those things we were talking about in terms of the embodied work, to do a longer series of kind of action research workshops where we can really test those, really explore those ideas and test them out.
That's amazing. I hope you do get the opportunity to really accelerate this,
Yeah, me too.
not just locally where you are, but all over the place. What do you see? Obviously the pandemic, has forced you to make shifts on how we train acting and do these kinds of groups online and things like that. Acting is a tradition that is thousands and thousands of years old. And the way we've gone about it, obviously changes over time. What do you see as the future of acting instruction, itself? And then also maybe the mental health care side for professional actors.
Okay, well, yeah, I mean that's a big one. I think they're all tied up. Oh, that's what I see as the future, is they're kind of all tied up, because part of what needs to be part of the future of actor training is that shift to having proper frameworks and things embedded that take better care of the people that are involved in a way that is supportive of them and supportive of the process of acting, rather than this kind of setting them up as opposites, right? Of either either you're pursuing excellence in the work or you're taking care of yourself, and creating a framework that where those are really working together, I think is a huge part of what the future of that process of training actors needs to be. I think the other side of it, I think for me, there's been discussion for a long time about psychological approaches to acting, and I think there really is a future for that and an interest in that, but I think it needs to be moved forward. I think it needs to be put into a model like ACT, or like something that develops from that can fully embrace a contemporary idea of how we think about who we are, how we think about issues like identity, and how we think about why people behave in the ways that they do. Otherwise that approach is no longer fit for purpose. It's not fit and actually can just repeat ideas that aren't helpful to us anymore. And I think kind of practically, and I think it attaches, I think we need a more empowering and empowered approach to what actor training is, and what how we think of actors, for the industry, for the actors themselves. I think there's an idea that's been around for a long time about what an actor does, particularly in terms of how the job works, of the kind of actor that they do their thing, they sit around and wait for the phone to ring, and they do this kind of idea. And I think we need to really embrace forms of training, and they're already going, but I think take further, that are absolutely have that conventional kind of acting work in there and at its heart, but that are encouraging actors to view themselves as artists with agency rather than just an agent, right? Where it's about how do you pursue your work for yourself? How are we preparing you in whatever form that is, whether that's forming your own company and making your own work, or just taking charge of yourself and yourself as an artist, rather than it being something that you're hanging on the industry to open the doors for you. And I think there are lots of different approaches to doing that, but that's what I think we need to move towards.
Yeah, that sounds nice. I'm really glad that actors coming up in the field now have somebody like you to connect with and work with and learn from. So I think you're doing an amazing service.
Oh, thank you. That's really
Everybody in the industry, right? But also just kind of generally, your contribution not only to the work you're doing with actors, but also to ACBS and the whole of ACT is actually really important, right? We want ACT to not just be something that is applied in this narrow way to people, but can be used as flexibly as possible. So for people who are looking to get connected with you, and then also maybe that working action group, go ahead and just tell people where they can find you and your work and how they can contact you.
So we have there's a website for the Working Action Group, which is www.theworkingactiongroup.com. And there's contact stuff on there. There's also a mailing list on there. So that's a really good starting point. Go and check that. Go and check that out. And I'm putting plans together at the moment for what the next kind of open workshops and online sessions will be hoping to do. So that's the way to find out swiftly about that. Obviously check out the article if you want to have a look at that, have a read of that. Start with the website and then
nice.
And then get a few to me.
And the groups that you're doing, the working action groups or the workshops, these are open to anybody in the world?
Yeah, well, this is what we're kind of working out the kind of strands of it at the moment. So yes, the hope is that we do some that will be in an online format that then are completely open for people to join and get involved with as they wish. And then there are some things that are with people who have been involved on a kind of ongoing basis, that we're trying to develop kind of more smaller projects and things with. So yeah, that's what that we will hopefully if you get onto the newsletter, give you a sense of when what is happening.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure speaking with you about your work and the work the work that other people are doing here. I hope that I have the chance to kind of see the products of your work on stage and on the screen at some point. That'd be really nice. Yeah.
So. Thank you very much for the conversation and for asking me to come and have a chat. It's really great.
Thank you.